Welcome to Who Has Time to Read, the show where your hosts Jeff and Adam, that's me, dive into the pages of our favorite reads from the last month. Each episode, we explore a mix of bestsellers and hidden gems, sharing insights, surprises, and recommendations. Whether you're a lifelong reader or just looking for your next great book, you're in the right place. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's turn the page on today's episode of Who Has Time to Read. Hi, I'm Adam Walker.
And I'm Jeff Hilimire.
And we're starting a new podcast about reading because we're nerds. That's really that's the impetus. No, this first episode, this podcast is really going to be about the books that we're reading, the books that we recommend and why we recommend them. But as an opening episode, I thought we would talk a little bit about why we read and then why we're doing this podcast. So I guess I'll start the question for you, Jeff. Like, why do you read?
Why do I read?
Yeah.
So as an entrepreneur, I feel like one of the only ways that I can learn to be better is through reading other people's journeys. It's for those of you that are entrepreneurs, and obviously, Adam, I know you are as well. It can be lonely. There's no playbook for it. You don't start your job and there's, 4 levels above you and there's, this is how this person did it. You sort of get out there and you just start figuring it out. So I always found at the beginning, books were something that I could go to and that's why I read a lot of autobiographies and biographies, because I think it helps me be a better leader, be a better entrepreneur. And then just, you mentioned that we're sort of nerds. I want to be smarter desperately.
Yeah.
So I just feel like reading for me, unlike say watching TV or even a documentary, reading just makes me have to sort of absorb things more. And I feel like it's exercising my brain. So how about you?
Yeah. So, it's similar reasons, right? Number one, I've always been one of those people that wants to be better. And I think there was a time in my adult life where I wanted to be better, but I wasn't really doing a good job of reading the things that would make me better. So I was reading like a lot of like random blog posts about productivity, for example, that probably did not make me more productive. And then, you and I, we had this text exchange, I think 2 years ago, and you were like, hey, I want to read more. I want to do a challenge with you. Can we commit to reading a certain amount of time every day? And my response was hilarious. It was like, yes, I think I can commit 10 to 15 minutes. And you were like, no, I was thinking 1 to 2 hours. And so in typical Jeff and Adam fashion, you threw down the gauntlet. I was like, done. I'm going to do that. And since that day, I've been reading 1 hour every day. And I missed one day, I think like 400 and some odd days ago. I've been tracking it every day. And it's been life-changing. I'm reading more variety of books than I've ever read, more topics than I've ever read. I feel like I'm growing in just as a human through that. And I want to continue to grow as a human, to be a better human, a better dad, really most importantly, a better husband, better friend. And I think reading helps me to do, and a better entrepreneur. Like that's a big part of it too. But for me, it's kind of all of the above.
It's amazing because I don't know how long I lasted trying to do an hour, but I gave it up, I think, pretty quickly.
I don't think you told me that, though. So thank you for not admitting that. I appreciate it.
You're not just finding that out now, right?
No, I knew you had given it up at some point. I didn't know how quickly you'd given it up. But for me, like what's interesting is I found that if I commit to reading a certain book in an amount of time or a certain number of pages, it's harder to stick with. It's been easy for me just to have a spreadsheet and be like, I'm going to read an hour a day. I'm literally timing it every day. And like, that's the first thing I do in the morning. I'll read for like 45 minutes and then I'll finish off later in the day a lot of times. And it's an easy, good way to start my day. I got to get up a little earlier, but it's worth it.
Yeah, no, it's great discipline. So it's interesting because I think I started reading a lot in like 2015, 2016. This is before you started really crushing books, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I think for a while I was the one that was reading the most, and I almost in my memory remember you saying like, you read 1 a month or something. That was your goal.
Yeah.
And now I've had, I think 1 year I read maybe 54 books, but now I'm like 3 books a month is what I get. I get around 33, 36 a year. You're getting like, last year was what?
I think it was 107, something like that. Now bear in mind too, like that's reading and listening. And so I walk the dog for a mile every day. So like that's a pretty decent amount of audio listening time as well.
Right.
And then when I'm doing like household chores, I'm also listening. So like, for example, one of the books that I'll talk about in our next episode is Michelle Obama's newest book. And it was like an 11-hour audiobook. I crushed it in 2 days. It was so good. So like, so I get through. So I think I only read like last year, for example, was that 107 number. I think 66 were on Kindle. And then there were probably another 4 or 5 that were physical books. And then all the rest were audiobooks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously you and I both count that as reading when you listen to an audiobook. Yeah. But now, gosh, I guess I can do the math now because you're reading about 3 times as much as me. So I must be reading 20 minutes a day, 20 on average. On the weekends, I'll do an hour, but during the week, I'm not as good. So, so why did we want to talk about books on a podcast?
Yeah, that's a great question. I assume you're asking me. So I think for 2 reasons, right? One is I want to have a reference point to come back to later on the books that I found the most important and impactful for my life. And I do keep a catalog of books, but I think having episodes where I'm actively talking about them will be really helpful just for me to memorialize them. 2, for other people that love books and are entrepreneurs and want to go down this, like I find that it's very difficult to find great books. There's so much out there that's either should be a blog post and it's now a book or something else. And so I have gotten better over time of abandoning books. And so I think this might help, number one, with telling you which ones to abandon, but also which ones to read. And hopefully just helps us to become better also, because if I have to remember the book to communicate it effectively to you and to our audience, that also means it's more ingrained in who I am as a human as well.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think what we'll do is make sure that, I never like when, we all have friends where like every movie they see is amazing and they have to recommend it. And every book they read is like amazing, right?
Yeah.
Certainly we're screening books so that there's a high chance they'll be pretty good.
Yeah.
But I also think, we'll try to say, like you said, this one maybe should have been a couple blog posts. It really didn't warrant an entire book. So we'll be true to that. For me, the reason I'm excited about doing this is like, you had mentioned the Michelle Obama book, like I'm really interested in reading that. So just like learning what you're reading and what you're, what you're recommending, but also just, I always love when people share the books they're reading. I read Obama's list every year. I think I don't read them all, but I read his list to see what he's been reading. I think Bill Gates puts one. The Marcus Aurelius guy.
Ryan Holiday. Ryan Holiday has a monthly list he puts out. Which is great.
I love it. So like, I just always love it when people share the books they're reading. So I figured, we'll do that. And then for me, the last part is I think I'll be a little bit more accountable to reading at a higher clip because I'll want to have some done by the time we have our monthly podcast.
Well, and I think also it does force us and me to read like the quality books I would want to recommend, because there are times where it's like I can fall into like a junk book. And I did that probably towards the end of that 107 year where I'm reading like a couple of books that are like a 1.5 hour reading time. And it's like, they're not amazing. And so I want to make sure I'm really after quality over quantity at this point. So this helps me do that.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. And we're going to do it monthly.
Yeah, I think monthly, and kind of review the last 30 days or so, what we've read, what's been great, what's been just okay, recommendations, maybe even what we're currently reading. I don't know. I'm reading something right now I'm pretty excited about. Maybe I'll mention that in our next episode. We'll see.
Cool. I'm looking forward to it. Let's have some fun.
Let's do it. That's all for today's episode of Who Has Time to Read. Thanks for joining us on this literary journey. If you enjoyed our bookish banter and discovered some new reads, please take a moment to rate us on your favorite podcast platform and share this episode with your friends and fellow book lovers on social media. Your support helps us reach more listeners and keep the conversations going. So until next time, keep turning those pages, and we'll be back soon with more books to share on Who Has Time to Read.